Chapter 4 of Innovators Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. We discuss the question, why do companies go up market and it's so difficult to go down market? This asymmetry is key to the Innovators Dilemma. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's November 12, 2020. I'm Krim Delko. For the day, the fund's down 4%. The market's down 0.5%. For the year, we're up 203%. The market is up 9.5%. We're outperforming by 193.5%. In chapter 4 of the Innovators Dilemma, Christensen talks about this asymmetry. It is very difficult to go down market and it is easy to go up market. Companies have a natural tendency to go up market, and that is why they miss new disruptive innovations and they don't care about them. There is an amazing anecdote in the book where Christensen talks about the 1.8-inch disk drive, which was invented and developed by several incumbents and new entrants. And he then talks about an interview he gave with one of the incumbents who were very successful with 8-inch, 5-inch, and other larger disk drives. And the CEO says, look, we have this 1.8-inch disk drive here. We have developed it. We are ready for the market, but there's no demand. So what do you want me to do? And then Christensen, he thinks to himself, well, okay, fine. This is possible. Sometimes new innovations just don't find the market. But there was a research report that he found which says that there is roughly 100 million in sales for this 1.8-inch drive. He asks the CEO, well, what about those 100 million? The CEO said, that's a lie. There are no sales. This market doesn't exist. A few weeks or months later, Christensen gives a seminar, and there is a person from Honda there. It's some business school seminar or something like that. Long story short, that person from Honda says, we're working on a in-car display technology, and we're so happy that we found this 1.8-inch drive technology, and we're installing it. And it's really amazing because it's almost solid state, has very few moving parts, very useful for the car, etc., etc. Christensen then asks, well, are you buying it from the incumbents, in particular that company that he spoke with? The person says, no, we're buying it from some startups. We have no idea. The incumbents, the big disk drive makers, are telling us they don't have it. The lesson of this anecdote is that Christensen is trying to make the point that even if within the company the engineers develop technology, it just doesn't dissipate up through the sales channels and the C-suite into resource allocation, which is enough to conquer the market. There is an institutional barrier towards developing these new technologies because they are inherently low margin or low end in the beginning, and then they creep up, and over time they can become very high margin businesses, but not at the moment. Christensen talks in chapter 4 about this institutional barriers. He talks about the two types of ideas of how innovation dissipates through a company. The one is top down, where the CEO says, I want to do this, this, and this, and then it gets done. And the other is where ingenuity, ideas evolve within companies, typically in the lower ranks, particularly in the engineering suite. And then they get through the company, and then middle managers get it to higher managers, etc. And by the time it gets to the top, by the time the company is able to act, these types of ideas and technologies and projects are already so framed by all the middle managers that are in this context, trying to get promoted, trying to get ahead in their company or in their careers, and therefore often these companies, these types of technologies get stuck. I want to mention also a quote that I picked up recently from Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, who said, a culture in a company is what gets you promoted or fired. And this fits very well into chapter 4 of the Innovators Dilemma. A culture of a company is what gets you fired or promoted. So the answer to this problem, the answer to the Innovators Dilemma, is obviously to build a culture where you can promote ideas such as the 1.8-inch disk drive, even though it might not have a large market immediately. This is the kind of culture you want to promote. But it's very difficult to promote that kind of culture because, as Christensen says in the book, the problem with these types of things is that if you surface a technology into the C-suite and it gets resources and allocations, and then the technology fails, it's typically okay. that's fine. Particularly engineers are expected to come up with new technologies. If they fail in terms of technology, it's fine. But if they fail in terms of market, very often you get punished, or you can even get fired for that. The problem with that is that people are disincentivized to try new markets with new technologies. All they're incentivized is try existing markets with new technologies. And this is the key difference. Try new markets with new technologies is risky. Try existing markets with new technologies is fine. Existing markets with new technologies is what Christensen calls sustaining innovation. It is good. It keeps creeping up in terms of performance, and the metrics which are already given in the market can get better, and you can get higher margins and more success. But the other side, try new markets with new technologies, is very risky, because those new markets, particularly with disruptive technologies, a la Clayton Christensen, which are, let's say, typically it's something which is in the beginning a bit lower end than the existing competing technologies. It has the potential, it has the character of a lower margin business in the beginning, and just a lower volume business, a lower sales business. Both of them are very difficult to be promoted within a large company. Now I want to talk about Tesla and one particular case study that I think fits very well. It is the self-drive technology that Tesla is competing with, in particular with Waymo. Those two competitors, in my view, fit very well into the Innovators Dilemma Chapter 4. Tesla is coming from the camera side, and Waymo is coming from the all-encompassing HD maps, LiDAR, everything. Let me give you a little bit of an overview over the self-drive technology and the culture in the self-drive technology space. Self-driving really started in the mid-2000s, when the DARPA challenge created a whole slew of engineers and software architects and software engineers that built self-driving cars that drove around in the desert. Those engineers then started either in academia or in companies like Google, what then became Waymo, working on those technologies. In a nutshell, what they did is combine several different sensor suites, such as LiDAR, radar, camera, etc., into core software, which is in jargon called sensor fusion, which then creates a controlling algorithm, which gets fed into a controlling algorithm, which then plans and controls and then drives the car. This architecture is what Waymo is more or less using, Cruise and many others are using. Tesla started with that kind of idea, but then flipped and started doing camera-only technology. I think this is a very good example of Chapter 4 low-end technology, which in the beginning might not be able to do as many fancy things as the sensor fusion technology, but over time, through sustaining innovation, I think has the potential to creep up and become a full self-drive suite. Maybe not as good as a perfect sensor fusion technology a la Waymo, but good enough to survive the marketplace, deliver value, create a revenue for Tesla, and make Tesla a leader in the intelligent luxury electric car space. This is the goal. The mission of Tesla is to decarbonize energy, and this is one of the tools that they have, which is to drive sales for their cars, which is give a good enough AI so the people can relax and don't have to drive, and also are much safer. This is already with the standard AI that they have, which they offer for no cost with the car that we, for example, have with the Model Y that we own. Already that's the case. Lane keeping, for example, is much better than if I drive, but of course there's a lot of glitches and imperfections on the street that the software doesn't catch, etc. We don't believe that it is even necessary for Tesla to have a completely full self-drive suite, because it's okay, at least for one generation of drivers, to still drive the car in certain situations. That's not the problem. What we see as a much bigger problem is to take away some of the bulk of the driving, which is highway driving, rush hour driving, just regular, boring, lane keeping driving, stop sign recognition. Also very important, recognition of blind spots, recognition of things like when there's fog and those types of things, where the cameras might be even better than your own eyes. So there's a lot of use cases where the camera-only technology, in our view, has potential to be better than human. So Tesla is competing with a human, not with Waymo. Waymo is competing with itself, with a standard that was set in the mid-2000s by engineers and academics. That might be a very nice set of vectors that they want to reach, and maybe academically very interesting, but from a practical perspective, we believe it's very difficult, very costly, and it will take a long time. If we didn't have Tesla, I think the self-driving conversation would not even exist. Because we have Tesla, and Tesla is at this creeping up type mode, meaning it's coming from a very low-end technology, i.e. Just cameras, using algorithms, trying to improve those algorithms, for example, with the rewrite that happened this year, and is creeping up market into new spheres that could be very interesting. It remains to be seen. It is not a foregone conclusion that Tesla will succeed with this camera-based AI. It's possible that there are some fundamental limitations. The laws of physics don't set the limitations, but knowledge does. To use the beginning of infinity and David Deutsch's argumentation, we need knowledge to get to the point through creative knowledge and through the marketplace of ideas. We need to get to a point where we can use that knowledge to instantiate in technology which solves our problems. The problem of self-drive is not going to be solved in one shot, but as I said before, I think there is a good chance that technology will creep up, and some of the vectors that the Waymo guys, or the, let's call it the academics, are trying to solve can be solved by camera only and creep up in the market and generate revenue for Tesla. This is the situation. Of course, the end game is some sort of robo-taxi. I don't know if that is very interesting for us right now. I think what we like much more with the Tesla software is the algorithmic insurance. So again, we spoke about this in a previous episode. If Tesla can incorporate its self-drive algorithms and drive their insurance product pricing algorithms in a way that, because you now know how the cars will drive in advance of driving, because you know the algorithms, you can also assess much better the probabilities of damage, and maybe also design the car in a way that you, because you know the vulnerabilities of your own driving technology, maybe you can design the car in a way that some of the high cost damage, well, I don't know, bumper stuff or just general chassis problems, I mean, whatever the big cost items are that cost money for your insurance, maybe you can mitigate that. So long story short, we believe that there are opportunities for Tesla to creep into the insurance market through the algorithmic product, and therefore also create a multi-billion-dollar market there. So to summarize, chapter 4 of the Innovators Dilemma talks about the asymmetry of companies. It's easy to go up high-end. So in our case, Waymo is going high-end, very sophisticated academic level performance. It's very difficult for companies to go down market because it's low margin. It's also from a status perspective, I think in the self-drive technology, sometimes it's actually the people who work on these problems, they just want to solve the very high-end academic problems, and they don't want to deal with the nitty-gritty, iterative, tinkering type camera-only based software that is Tesla dealing with. But in the end, I think that is the solution that has the best chance to get to market at a reasonable amount of time. Thank you.